Daniel Jones has a good day on day 7 of training camp practice, plus another thought about the offensive line and more coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's Locked On Giants podcast episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, a credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI.com. That's where you can find my written work. Again, that's New York Giants New York Giants on SI.com. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, to my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, Daniel Jones has himself a day at practice. We're going to talk about that, as well as some feedback Mike Kafka, the assistant head coach / offensive coordinator, had to say about Daniel Jones, stuff that I found kind of interesting. And then in segment 2, ladies and gentlemen, I know I did this yesterday. I talked about the offensive line yesterday, but I've got to talk about this offensive line unit again, because just some things I have to share with you. Okay. My opinions on this matter, but I think they're kind of valid, what I'm going to say. And I'll share that with you in segment 2. And then finally in segment 3, I have a random thought that as I was putting this show together, this is something, bigger picture that I think is applicable to the New York Giants. And it's just something that I want to throw out there and, get some of your feedback on it too. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in the segment 3 of the program. So that's our agenda. I hope you'll stay with us. And again, thank you for spending time with us on the Locked On Giants podcast. Daniel Jones, ladies and gentlemen, had himself a nice day of practice. Now, this was practice number 7 for the Giants. Jones unofficially, by my count, 11 of 15. Threw 2 beautiful deep passes, both touchdowns, throws, one to Malik Neighbors, who else, right? And one to Jalen Hyatt. And, I really like, by the way, these receivers, how they're able to take the top off a defense, get behind the defense and separate. I mean, gosh, when was the last time we saw that on a consistent basis, right? But let's get back to Daniel Jones here for a minute. Jones has been up and down all training camp. And, there are people who have said, oh, he's always up and down. You never know what you're going to get from him one day to the next. Today, the Giants had the coordinators speak. And Mike Kafka, who is the assistant head coach / offensive coordinator, was asked about Jones and how he's been doing. And, Kafka, who's been a lot better this year, I think, with his answers, a little bit more expansive than he's been in the past. He basically was saying that Jones's problem that we have seen through basically 6 days of camp, this today being the 7th day, has all been a matter of timing. And he spoke about, even though Jones, this is his 6th year in the league, he hasn't played ball in 11 on 11 since November, when he was injured. So in Kafka's opinion, the timing is off for Jones because, he's still trying to get a feel. He's got new receivers he's throwing to. You guys might say, well, he's thrown in the past to Darius Slayton. He's thrown to Jalen Hyatt, although Jalen Hyatt, not so much. Wan'Dale Robinson, again, not so much. So giving Jones the benefit of the doubt here, you can make an argument and say that, in a way, Jones is kind of starting over with this group of receivers, all right? Again, Malik Neighbors is new, didn't really throw to him. Matter of fact, he didn't throw to him in 11 on 11s during the spring. Drew Lock, if you recall, took all the 11 on 11 snaps. So really, this is the first time Jones is throwing in an 11 on 11 situation to Malik Neighbors. This is really, the first extensive work he's getting in with Wandale Robinson, who had his rookie year cut short. Then he came back, and by the time he came back and was up and running, Jones was kind of in and out of the lineup with his own injury issues. And Jalen Hyatt, you can make the same case for Jalen Hyatt, and that Jalen Hyatt last year, not as many targets as, you thought he would have gotten. And most of his targets did come after Jones exited the lineup with the season-ending ACL. So Kafka just spoke about, angles. He spoke about, the timing issue. And he, naturally he said that Jones was making progress and he was feeling good about the way or the direction Jones was headed in. So look, if you're looking to give Jones the benefit of the doubt, and I think we have to, because, whether we like it or not, he's going to be the quarterback this year, for as long as the team is competitive, for as long as the team is, winning. That's how you give him the benefit of the doubt. You say, okay, look, he's just now getting his feet underneath him. He's throwing to receivers that, in 11 on 11s that he didn't really throw to in the spring because he wasn't cleared to do that. And you take all that and you say, okay, now build on it. And, this is kind of why, to me, I'm not sure it makes really good sense to track quarterback stats or any stats in the training camp practice, because it also depends on, what they're working on or what the call was. And a lot of times we don't know what the call was. It could be, maybe something that they wanted to see from the defense, for example. So you don't really know that. But overall, this is the opinion of Kafka, that Jones, he's going to settle down, that he's going to get better, the better offensive line protection, the play call, which Brian Dable is going to call the plays. I mean, Kafka didn't say that, but, he did speak about how his role may potentially change if he is not the play caller, which we all know he's not going to be. But just an overall, I think, feel good feedback about Daniel Jones, which if you think about it, it does make sense. And I know some of you will say, well, he's always had this problem. Daniel Jones has always been inconsistent. But folks, go back to the deep ball and, how that was the strength of Jones. He's got the arm strength to do it. If he trusts his eyes, and I still say that's the part that, you really got to see, because again, sometimes the calls on defense are kind of coordinated with what they're doing on offense because they want to see certain things. And we on the sidelines, as we're watching this stuff, we don't know what's coordinated and what's, spontaneous. But, if you want to give Jones the benefit of the doubt, there's your reason to do so. And, the past is the past. And I know I've spoken about, his post-snap processing time and not trusting what he sees and stuff like that. And I think where that comes into play is when he's throwing into traffic or he's missing wide open receivers, or, he sees a guy that he has a slight window for, but he's going for the check down. That's where, the post-snap processing comes into play. And, I mentioned, I think yesterday on yesterday's show that I did an article on the benefits of post-snap processing over on New York Giants on SI.com. And I spoke to Drew Lock about it. Got some really good information about that and what it does for a quarterback. So I just feel like, after hearing what Kafka had to say, after talking to Drew Lock a little bit, I feel a little bit better about Daniel Jones right now. Now, the big test, or the first litmus test, is coming up on Monday when the Lions come to town. All right, that's going to be 2 days worth of joint practices. So that's going to be a key litmus test. And we'll see how Jones does, because I can tell you right now that when the Lions come to town, it's not going to be scripted. It's not going to be, oh, we're going to run quarter coverage against, you guys running a wheel route and this route or whatever, 12 personnel. No, it's going to all be spontaneous. And Jones and company are going to have to, stand up and really, deliver the goods, or at least hold their own against the Lions. And that, to me, is going to tell us really where Daniel Jones and this offense really is. All right. Now, speaking of the Detroit Lions, they're coming to town on Monday and Tuesday. We still have, by By the way, we have Friday practice, which is going to be in pads, and then we're off Saturday, and then Sunday is going to be padless. This next segment coming up has to do with the Detroit Lions and the offensive line. So don't go anywhere. I'll get into that in just a moment. Hey, Giant fans, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and to bring home that win. So go on and keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And again, thank you for spending part of your day with me here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And don't forget, coming up on Saturday, we're going to have a live stream. Brandon Olson, who has been with me at practice, he's been helping me out over on New York Giants on SI.com. We're going to be on the program together. We're going to do a live stream. We'll talk about our observations, our concerns, our reasons for hope. We'll answer questions. And that's going to start, I think it's at 7:30. I'll post it on the YouTube channel. And hopefully you guys will be able to join us. And yes, folks, I promise you, I'm working to get together with Tana and Dog. Those live streams are not over. I promise you, we will get one in once I can find a slot for the scheduling. So that being said, let's talk about the offensive line. Now, I know I talked about it yesterday. Another thought kind of came up. All right. So to recap, John Michael Schmitz missed another practice. The hope was, okay, he rests. Yesterday was a day off, Wednesday being a day off. The hope was he would be ready to go today being Thursday, and he's not. So what that meant for the New York Giants is they had another combination of the offensive line where they had Austin Schlottman and Greg Van Roten were alternating at center with the first team. Now, folks, this is where I'm starting to really, really get concerned. Number one, besides the fact that John Michael Schmitz just can't seem to get on the field. I mean, the Giants have a tendency, and specifically head coach Brian Daboll has a tendency to downplay injuries and say, oh, he's just sore. And okay, I get it. Guys get sore, but there's sore and then there's injured, and I'll talk about, actually, that's spoiler alert. That's actually what I'm going to talk about in the next segment. But John Michael Schmitz, I've mentioned this before, with that shoulder that he has, something's apparently not right in there, because this is the second go round that he has an issue with it. At this point, get it fixed. If you have to, get it fixed. But here's the thing, folks. As I record this, they are still not sure who the backup center is going to be. And they keep moving guys around along that offensive line interior, which last year was perhaps the weakest part of the Giants' offensive line. The part that gave up the most sacks, believe it or not. So, you had, for example, Aaron Stinney went to, I believe, right guard, which is where Van Roten is supposed to play. You've had Joshua Azudu get snaps at left guard. It's like every day it's a different combination. And thus far, this unit has not been able to build up continuity. And look, I get it, injuries happen, but this is what we saw last year. We kept seeing different combinations, which little different situation last year that I don't recall there was as many injuries as there were this year. But at this point, like I said in the end of last segment, your first litmus test is coming up against the Detroit Lions. At this point, you probably would have liked to have had, an idea as to what your starting five is going to look like. Because now that you keep, playing around with things and disrupting the chemistry and the continuity and everything like that, that's not good. That's a concern as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, it's no one's fault per se because again, injuries happen. And I know Carmen Brasillo, the new offensive line coach, she's working to get these guys cross-trained so that they can step up, not miss a beat because injuries are going to happen. But just the circumstances have me really concerned about this offensive line right now. And, it's interesting because John Mara spoke to the media today. There was an event over at Hackensack. Uh, I think it's the University of Hackensack Memorial Hospital, or I apologize, I don't know the exact name of the hospital, but it's the official hospital over at that the Giants use here in Jersey. And John Mara was asked about the offensive line, and he said, "Oh, it's still early. We're not worried about it." Well, I'm sorry, with all due respect to John Mara, they were working on this offensive line in the spring. And then, the Evan Neal injury or the Evan Neal being on PUP, that happened. Then the John Michael Schmitz injury happened. So, yeah, you've been working on it since the spring, but you still keep changing things up. And at some point, when do you lock in and say, this is going to be our line? And these are going to be our backups. So, yeah, technically the calendar says August 1st, which is the day I'm recording this, but you've got your first preseason game next week. You've got joint practices with another team starting on Monday. All right. What happens, and hopefully this won't happen, but what happens if the Giants go out there and the Lions, who, by the way, have a very good defensive front, what happens if they're in the backfield and they're harassing the quarterbacks? And the Giants passing game, which is good at times, suddenly it looks like, dysfunctional. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but there's a very real chance that it can. And, at this point, get together with the offensive line and you've got to have some kind of plan in place here. And I don't know. I just, hopefully I'm worrying about nothing, but at this point, I really, really have doubts about, whether or not they're going to be ready to roll next week. Now they do have, 2 other games after that. And hopefully they get some of these injured guys back and they can settle that line in. I'm not really sure how long it would take for an offensive line to come together. But the good news is, Brasillo is a good teacher and they do have a lot of veterans. So it shouldn't be a case of, oh my gosh, we've got all these rookies and we've got to teach them and, their heads are spinning and everything like that. So that works to their favor. But, that's a unit you ideally would like to start seeing to settle down. And I don't think they're anywhere near settling down just quite yet. All right, coming up next, my random thought. I kind of teased to it a little bit in this segment, but I'm going to go into more detail right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Major League Baseball is in full swing, as are the Olympics. And pretty soon the WNBA will resume, as will the NFL, the NBA, and NHL. There's just so much going on in the sports world these days that deciding what to bet on is probably harder than making the actual bet itself. But with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, placing your bets is so easy. You can choose from a wide variety of props, money lines, odds, futures, and more from any of the sporting events that are currently going on. And all this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So go on and head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And again, thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with me here. All right, in this segment, as I was putting the show together and also as I was doing my writing, which I do every day, I had a random thought that I wanted to kind of talk out with you guys. And, I'd be interested to hear what you think. Now, in football, I've always said that football is a violent game, that, injuries they're going to happen. But, something kind of opened my eyes this summer and made me start to think about the difference between being injured and being hurt. Now, what do I mean by that? Jermaine Illuminor, let's take him for an example. He gets whacked in the ribs by Dexter Lawrence, and he goes down and they take him off for evaluation, make sure, nothing's cracked or whatnot. And, we're told that he's hurt or that he's injured. The next day, we asked Brian Dable, okay, what's the status on Jermaine Illuminor? And he's like, well, he's gonna, he may do individuals or, we might hold him out or whatever. And what happens? Jermaine Illuminor comes in and he starts taking team reps. So it got me thinking, is it a matter of toughness? Did Jermaine Illuminor just say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I got hurt, but I'm not injured. Yeah, I'm sore from getting whacked in the ribs by Dexter Lawrence, who wouldn't be, but I'm not hurt bad enough to where I can't get out there and practice. That's what I think I saw in Jermaine Illuminor. And I say this because there have been many, many times, and this is kind of I guess, a downfall, if you will, with Brian Dable. And one of the things I'm not really crazy about when he's asked about injuries. And I get it, it's a competitive thing, but, a lot of times he says, if we ask him about an injured player, oh, he's going to, he's going to maybe do individuals and then we'll see where he's at. Or, oh, we're going to hold him out, because he's not quite ready. And then we get out to practice. And guess what? The player is either practicing, the player that they were going to limit to individuals is now doing team drills. And it's like, you start to wonder, what did the Giants define as being injured versus being hurt? All right. When Dable says, oh, this player, we held him out because he was sore. Well, guess what? It's football. You're going to be sore. If you're practicing, you're going to get sore. You're hitting other people. You're putting on, God knows how many pounds of equipment in the hot sun, which is brutal. I mean, heck, I stand out in the hot sun for training camp and it takes a lot out of me. And I'm not wearing half the equipment that these guys are wearing. You're going to be sore. So I just wonder if, sometimes do the Giants, who I do think have a good medical and training staff, but are they maybe sometimes a little too ultra conservative when it comes to injuries, where they hold guys out maybe longer than they need to, when they confuse or not confuse, that's not the right word, but maybe blur the lines between being injured and being hurt. Okay, nobody's going to be 100% when you're playing football, even this time of year. It's just not going to happen. But, I'd like to think that guys who are missing practice are doing so because they are legitimately concerned, they being the medical team, that if the guy goes out there and practices, he's going to make an injury worse. And not because the guy is just sore and he needs a day or two off. Now, I do know that the Giants, they use the GPS system to monitor guys' workloads, and they'll back off of a guy because, look, you can't run a guy down to the ground. But here's the other thing. Brian Dable changed up the practice tempo here to where it's 3 on, 1 off. And, I get it. Some guys get more reps than others, but to me, just something is just blurred there. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it to better understand, the logic behind it. I think it's just something I'm going to have to ask. I doubt I'll get much of an answer, but I'm just going to have to put the question out there and just see what's defined there. But it's something that I bring up because, this team, as you guys know, has dealt with injury bugs for the last several years. And, being conservative hasn't helped them. I get it, but where do you draw the line? Where do you just say, okay, you know what? You're hurt, yes. You're sore, yes, but you're not going to make it worse by going out there. And then where is that toughness? Jermaine Illuminor, by going out there the next day after getting whacked in the ribs and admitting that he had trouble breathing after getting whacked in the ribs by Dexter Lawrence. That's toughness, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you want to see in your football players. And I don't know. I'd like to think that the Giants have that. I do think they have it, but sometimes I just wonder if we see it as much as we probably should. So, look, just my theory, just my thoughts on that. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. So if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below. Let me know if you think that the team is too soft. Do you think they're tough enough? Maybe I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I don't know, but I'd like to hear what you think. And if you're listening on our audio platforms, feel free to send me an email and let me know what you think, because I'm always curious to hear what you guys have to say about, the topics that get discussed here on the podcast. So that being said, that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with us. We will have a practice report after tomorrow being Friday. Most of you will probably be seeing this podcast on Friday. So I will do a show for you on after the practice, and then Saturday's a day off. Sunday, they're back. And then Monday, Tuesday, those are the two big litmus test days with the Detroit Lions coming to town. So you know the drill. As long as there's a practice, I'm here for you. And don't forget to ring the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube, so that you are notified every time I post a daily update. We are posting daily updates here on the Locked On NFL Network, so that you are kept in the loop on everything. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for me, and I will see you tomorrow.